Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. Yes, I am still sporting my mason jar, if that tells you how my week went. But I am sipping on some Chardonnay. Let me know in the comments what you're sipping on. Zen Ginger, we see you're already here with us, pointing out the fact that I was rushing to make this episode's links, and it was actually scheduled for 3 hours ago. Good thing I didn't shoot it out over the web, right? Because that was just an honest mistake on my end. Obviously, we always try to get here at 8. We're late because we were playing around with sharing and how to share images on my end, on Holly's end, because Holly's been a huge help in helping run the show when I'm slacking. But so we were playing with that. But yes, it is now. Here we are for Wine Wednesday, and I do apologize. I will be more careful in the future not to have it 3 hours ago. I just forgot to edit that part when I was setting it up. So here we are. And tonight we are going to talk about the overall theme tonight is what to look for when you're buying a seahorse, how to purchase healthy seahorses, and where to find them. But included in that, we've got a situation that was brought up in the Seahorse Whisperer group on Facebook, or was it Seahorse Sources group? Either way, it was brought up in it was brought up in a group on Facebook, and we've gotten permission to share. And so we're going to share some images and talk about what's going on, why it's going on, and then that will, of course, lead into the conversation about what to look for when you're buying seahorses and, where to get them. But hello, Zen. Hello, Vincent. Hello, everyone. Audio good. Gotcha. You're drinking a Coke. Hey, that's okay. I still have in fact, give me 1 second. I got to show you guys this cup. Still working on where is it? Dang it. Okay. Still working on the website, but soon all of this stuff will be available. And I still have I got to send one to Kevin, I think, or Kevin or Matt, but it's got wine on it. But I still have my coffee counts. I know it's backwards, probably how you're seeing it, but it's coffee counts on Wednesday. Grab your glass and join us. All right. So lots of cute stuff coming with that, but counts too. But anyways, so I am going to stop. Oh, what are you drinking, Ray? Wawa? H2O? Can't hear you, Ray. Are you muted?
Yeah.
Okay.
I muted until I mute the YouTube, and I forgot to turn it back on again.
So what are you drinking on, though? Is that water?
Ice water.
Ice water. Ice water works, too. You guys don't have... In fact, I
freeze water in a bottle and then top it up the rest of the way with water and just keep topping it up until the ice is gone.
Nothing wrong with that. I drink a lot of water, too. And I've been putting on pounds lately, and I figured out that I'm going to Aquashella in November. Anybody who's going, make sure that you let me know so we can meet up. But I'm going to Aquashella in November to take part in the Women in Reefing event. And, of course, just go because it's awesome. And I'm hoping to maybe get something seahorse-wise going. I've got to talk to Joanne about that. So, but anyways, my point, I know I'm rambling. My point is you may see me next week switch to the 100-calorie Smirnoff little ice-its because I got to be going to see people soon, And this wine packs a punch. Anyways, the seahorses, right? Who gives a shit about what I'm saying? Holly, I'm going to hand it over to you. And as I said, we're going to lead into where, what to look for and where to buy seahorses. And then, of course, we always leave time for any questions. Even if we don't instantly go to them because we're having a discussion, we will get to your question. So if you have any questions that have nothing to do with the topic, just ask in the comments. Hey, Fish Family, love you. Appreciate you guys sharing our links everywhere. And good to see you. All right, Holly, I'm handing it over.
Okay.
Oh, Vincent's drinking Miller. Woo!
Yeah, Vince is here too. Now. And I'm drinking diet orange soda and vodka. is.
See, I mean, I love it. I love it. We got to come up with some new drinks. This wine's getting to me.
All
But Holly,
right.
set the stage and lead us in before you share the pictures. Set the stage. Tell us the whole
Yeah.
circumstances.
So this morning I'm waking up and I pick up my phone and I see there's a post on Seahorse Sources group. Someone named Kayla was asking what to do about one of her seahorses was suddenly acting strangely. And a few of us saw the post and answered it. You know, myself and Vince saw it. And my first thought was looking at the seahorse. It reminded me of something else we talked about here on Wine Wednesday. Another lady had a similar issue with a seahorse, and to me what it was the seahorse just didn't look right. It looked malnourished, like underdeveloped.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience, when I was raising some fry a few years ago, I did have a few that didn't develop right. They never grew. Like even when they were converted to frozen mysis, they just didn't
Mm-hmm.
grow. There was something wrong with them. I ended up losing them. And the seahorse to me looked like that. And when she said that she'd had her two seahorses for a while, I noticed one seahorse looked normal. The other one looked like it was still a baby.
Well, and let's
Like only
let's be clear. Let's be real quick. Let's be clear. She didn't raise these seahorses. She purchased them. So where you're telling your story about you noticed as your fry developed didn't develop right. That's not the situation with her. She bought these seahorses and one has taken
she
off and one
bought
has
them
not.
like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So if we're ready, I can look and make sure the pictures are ready to share, and then I can share and we can talk about it.
Yes.
And experts here yourselves can give your opinion on what's going on and what you think of this. So let me check because I can't see everything at once. All
Mm-hmm.
right, so I think I'm ready to share. So here we go.
Holly's doing a great job. She's learning the ropes. Go ahead, Holly. All right. What are we looking
Okay,
at?
so this is the seahorse that she was having a problem with, and she posted a few pictures. So I'm going to kind of scroll through them and notice how small this seahorse is with the plastic chain. And there's
Yeah.
her other seahorse that I imagine is the same age.
So did she buy them together and one just developed and one didn't?
Um, she's watching. Maybe she can type in the chat,
Okay.
but I believe she got them together.
Okay.
I'll have to look, I think, because she messaged me, and I think
I think that's what she stated in her
yeah.
post.
Yeah, and so I'm going to go and share some other pictures.
Okay.
Okay, so let me stop sharing for a minute so I can get those pictures ready. And these pictures, I'll explain, she sent to me privately later
Okay.
and gave me permission to share for her. So this is when she got the seahorses. So let me go back to sharing.
And she did comment in the YouTube and say that yes, she bought them together from the same people. So
In my okay, perfect. I can't see that, so you can look at that
I
part
know.
for me.
I'll help you with that side. Yeah.
So, thank you. So this is when she got them back in February.
Okay. Okay.
Now, then this is July, the same
Holy
seahorse.
moly. Wow.
She hasn't grown.
No.
Well,
January.
I'm getting some instant thoughts, but go ahead, Holly, and finish showing us, and then we can chit chat.
Yeah, so that's all the pictures I
Okay.
have to share. But so now you know the story and you guys can see what's going on and share your opinions and experience. And I'll
Okay,
stop
so
sharing.
I was gonna say keep if you could keep the picture up just for a few more minutes. Sorry, Holly.
Okay, which one do you want?
The
Like the
last
one of
one
the
you
two
had.
of them together or the last
Yeah,
one? Okay.
that's good. No, the two of them together. That's good.
Okay. Let me go back to them.
Yeah,
And so,
because the female just did not grow.
so Cheryl, well, in this picture that we were just looking at of the youngin, what do you notice right away?
It's not visible in this picture, but I noticed in one of the other pictures where on her spinal column behind her operculum, it looked like the spines themselves looked like they were inflated, and it looked like there was a big white spot there, which is really not normal unless it was something, an artifact in the camera that should not have looked like, basically looked like a white blob behind her operculum on her neck.
And for
There we go.
anybody new,
And it was on the other side of this one, the other
okay,
side.
okay, and just for anybody new, operculum is what, Cheryl?
It's the covering for the gills.
Okay, so it's like your
Okay, so now
cheeks.
look at the white there on, you follow the head back, and there right in the middle of the picture, you see all that white there?
Yeah.
It's either an artifact or there's something going on. It could be bacterial, it could be parasitic. I can't tell from this photo, but it definitely does not look normal.
See, and that to me, seriously, to me, that could even be coloring or saddle. Unless, again, like you said, it's hard to tell in a picture. Is it indented? Is it, sticking up? What are the factors that are involved? But like seeing coloration like that wouldn't necessarily freak me out, but the size and the status of the seahorse would.
Yeah, the thing that's getting me is if you look at it, the spines are good up near the head. Then you go through a thick, what looks like a thickening area of the
Yeah.
actual skin and everything, and then it thins back out. That's suggestive of an infection.
Sure. No, and Holly, can you pull up the picture of the seahorse from July? I'm sorry to
Yes.
make you keep switching back and forth.
Yeah,
Apologies.
that's okay. Let me see where it is. There we go.
And Vincent made the comment, I didn't catch it until a later picture, that it seemed like I was looking at a fry and not a year-old seahorse. Ray, when
Yes.
you look at this picture right here, what's your instant thoughts? Like, how old would you
Well,
think it is?
first off, it's not a year if she got them in February. It's only 7 months.
Mhm.
Well, but
And
it was so old when she got
So
it.
they're a year old, roughly, I think is maybe
this
what
is
she meant.
not something that's uncommon, though. In the years that I was raising, and it happened both the reed eye and the erectus, every once in a while there were a fry or two that just wouldn't grow. And
Sure.
it's most likely something internal with them. Maybe their digestive tract is not functioning up to par, so they're not getting the nutrients they need. And usually they always are going to look really emaciated. They will not, they will never fill out even for the size that they have attained. And there's nothing really that you can do about it.
And emaciated means what, Ray?
Well, they're skinny. They're not getting flesh on their structure.
They look sunken. Their sides look
Yeah.
sunken. In
So
between their
see
no-
how
spines,
it's
sunken.
great? It's not curvy like a normal seahorse would be, like
Sure.
with the
No,
big.
but that's
belly.
typical of the young ones anyway. They don't
Mhm.
they don't get curves until they start maturing.
But
Yeah.
that's what I want to focus in on is, you know, and we aren't going to name any companies or any people or anything like that. But my problem is it seems as if people or companies are selling these seahorses too young. This looks like a baby to me, period. I mean,
That's a
this
year
looks like a
old.
fry.
Mhm.
I understand, but I guess the point that I'm trying to come to is if they weren't sold so young, then the breeder or the person or whatever would have recognized that it was a failing to thrive fry and not sold it, right? But if they're selling them as fry, then we've got a problem because then the person who buys them has to deal with this and doesn't really know what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, because this to me
That's
looks
my thought. I would not sell a seahorse that didn't look healthy and grown and
so. Let's jump into that. You can take down the picture, and we'll come back to it. But let's kind of touch base on what do you look for when you're buying a seahorse? Like for someone who just doesn't know, you know, what to look for. What are the things you would look for when buying a seahorse? How big should it be? You know, all
First
that
thing
kind of
I
stuff.
do would be to talk to the breeder and ask the breeder a lot of questions. How old are they? I want to see the parents. I want to know how long they've had the adults. Uh, Basically, I want the personal information about the seahorses before I do anything, and that includes their date of birth, when they were born, how big were they when they were born? That can give you some insight too. If maybe they're a little on the small side, but maybe it was a young pair the first time, that's not the surprise. But if
Mm-hmm.
it's a mature 5 or 6 year old pair that's reproduced a lot, you shouldn't run into these kind of problems.
Ray, those are great comments, Cheryl, but it's not really practical because if you're dealing with a person reading, they could answer those questions. But if you're talking about, say, Ocean Rider or Seahorse Savvy or whatnot, they're not going to, be able. Even if they could, they're not going to take the time to answer all those questions. Or if you're dealing with a store and you're buying them from a store, some people have to. And the bottom line is they're not going to have any idea about the parents or how big they were as fry. They could give you possibly a birth date, but they don't really know that's true unless they bred them themselves. And Cheryl, your questions are good because you're coming from a stance that you used to be the breeder. So you could answer all those questions and you would. But in general, that's not really, they're not going to be able to
But the
answer.
thing is, it's like I tell people, and I'm going to back up for a minute. I've got a dear friend who has.
Are we back? I lost you guys for a minute. I lost my connection. Is everybody still
Oh,
here?
yep.
Yep.
Yeah, you did what I did last week. You
Yeah.
snapped out and in.
But
We're good.
I have a friend that he's a professional. He raises all kinds of corals and fish. And a few years back, he called me because some people got some wild caught seahorses and they weren't eating. So they wanted him to get him some captive bred seahorses and to teach the wild caughts to get fed. And I explained to him about the potential problems with uronema and just all the problems associated with it. And he goes, I am thanking you for telling me. You just saved me from making the biggest mistake I was about ready to make. And
Sure.
and we're still friends. He calls me if he has a question about something like that has to do with seahorses. He'll still call me.
Sure. But Ray, on your end, so you thought that those questions weren't practical. What would you say someone should go ahead?
In my opinion, most of the time when we see somebody, it's too late for us to be given this advice. There's very few people that are going to come to watch this show before they buy the seahorses. So anything that we tell out there is going to have very little, I don't know what the word
Effect.
is. There's going to be very few people that are going to be able to make use of it. What we need to do is when the people have the problem and come to us, then let them know that it is something that's rampant in the industry, selling off the ones too small, and the fact is that, especially when they're sold at that size, you're not going to know if you've got a non-developer or not.
Right.
Once it gets evident that you do have a non-developer, then you're just going to have to live with it. Like nobody
So,
wants to put it down. So it's a case to live with it. It's not something that's unusual. It's not because you did something wrong. If the one grew and the other one didn't, then you've been doing something right for the one, and you haven't been able to get the other one to grow. Not because of what you're doing or not doing. It's because there's something internal in that little fry that is not allowing him to get the nutrition that he needs from the food.
totally agree. And
Generally don't get enough.
that's a great point, and I'm glad you made it, Ray. And I was going to get to that in a little bit, diving into her specific situation and what she can do going forward. But just taking a step back, like Holly, I want to hear your answer, and then I will answer. Like, what would you suggest? And Ray, you made another good point. We need more people to come to Wine Wednesday so we can warn them ahead of time, right? So everybody
Yeah, but
share.
the thing is, most people, they're going to buy the Seahorses,
Then
then they're
come.
going to hear about
Yes.
going when,
I get
and then they'll come.
I get your point. I don't disagree. I'm
Yeah.
just saying if we all share
Kelly
it
and
on
I
all
were
of our
just having
pages,
that discussion
I know
before
but
the show.
But if we share with more people, then someone getting ready to buy Seahorses might come. And listen, like Zen Ginger, she came here
Yes.
first, right? I mean, come on.
Yes.
Bonnie said in the comments, anytime I've seen Seahorses in a local aquarium, they looked thin and sickly. I would only buy them from Alyssa Savvy, Seahorse Savvy. Local stores don't seem to know how to care for them. I would say too, and I want to hear Holly's thoughts before I ramble on, but I would say just on that comment, it really, really, really depends on the store and the person and the place. Because like when I raised my fry and I had these fine folks and Dan as my mentors, and I didn't sell them until I got them right, I did sell them to a local store, right? So anybody buying those Seahorses, I would say you're perfectly safe to buy them because I worked with the store, educated them, made sure they were in a standalone system. They were not attached to the other systems and all these other things that I could ramble on about. But it just, how do you know if your store is doing that? Well, one of the things you could do is ask, where do you get your Seahorses, right? Is it from some, warehouse or not warehouse, what is it called? Wholesaler? Or is it from a local breeder? That matters. But Holly, I want to let you give your 2
So
cents.
I
What do you
have
look for?
actually, I pulled up some pictures and I'll share because I have examples when I was raising mine of both the ones that were doing well and ones that I would consider suitable to pass along to a new home and ones that were not doing well. So we can compare and talk about it. And when
Great, because Zen Ginger said the body doesn't look shaped right, really. Are they supposed to be that skinny in the torso, even
Right.
young? I'm not that knowledgeable, so don't know. And it depends on the age. When they're little teen
Yeah.
fry, they do look like little nothings.
They
But Holly,
do.
go ahead.
And the age they might be ready at different ages. Some might develop faster than others too, but it's what you want to look for when you look at them, not necessarily what age are they. So I'll share
I agree.
some pictures. And back when, I didn't raise a lot like Cheryl has or Ray has.
Hey, I raised a lot too.
Or you yourself, Kelly, but I raised a
Yeah.
few. So I did sell some locally and shipped a few. And when I did sell to a store, like a local fish store, I would supply them with my business cards and also flyers of directions of how to care for them. And my phone number,
Awesome.
if you have problems with the Seahorses or have questions about them, so people could get a hold of me. But I'll set up to share my screen, and then you can see some of the ones I raised and some of the ones that did well and some that did not. But maybe that will help people with what to look for. So this is some that I was raising, And you can see here they're not really that big. They're a few inches. But see how their bodies are filled out?
Yep.
Not stringy looking. And as we scroll through, you can just see there's more substance to these bodies
Yes.
than there was.
And how old are these guys?
This is Sadie. I want to say here she was probably about 4 to maybe 5 months, so just about an age to go to a new home. I ended up keeping her, of course, but this is Sadie when she was young.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that might be her mom. Let me go out where I can see all the pictures. And I think I have some examples here of, okay, here we go. See how little and stringy that little guy was?
Yep.
So,
And
if you
was that one that you
a
weren't able to
seahorse,
keep?
I'm not sure. It may have been Scrappy Doo because
Okay.
Scrappy Doo came from a small batch. There were only 3 of them. His siblings didn't make it. And he ended up growing, like he had a rough start, but he ended up becoming a really healthy seahorse. And I'm not sure if this is him or one of the ones that did not make it, but I would not sell a seahorse that looked like this. Is my
But also your story though
Mhm.
is we'll pick this up later when we're talking about Kayla's situation, because it's not like it's hopeless. It's
No.
not great, but it's not hopeless. Go on
But
though.
the
I'm
thing
sorry. Go
is,
ahead.
when they're this size, when they're like that, as someone who's raising them, you're feeding them about 6 times a day, every two
Yeah.
to 3 hours. And a
Yep.
person who takes home a seahorse like this doesn't know, they see a seahorse in the store and bring it home, and don't know that you need to get it nourished so that it will grow. And like Ray said, some of them just don't. Now look in the picture, see the little one and see the
Yeah.
big one. Okay, so
Yep.
this is, I see in my baby Christmas. Okay, I named this seahorse Christmas. It was the lone survivor of a batch that was born around Christmas time. None of them were really healthy. At this point, this seahorse was converted to frozen mysis, but it never grew.
Mm-hmm.
Never grew. And here in this picture, let's see, April, it was born at Christmas. What is that? December, January, February, March, April. It's 4 months old.
Yep.
And the seahorse it's sitting next to is only 5 to 6 months old. See the difference in size? This one never grew, and I ended up losing him.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he was eating, like Tana, or not Tana, but Kayla said her seahorse was eating still up to the point where she lost it, a day,
Mm-hmm.
up to the day. And that's the same thing with this little guy. He ate, but he never grew. He never developed for whatever reason. And even though he's that old, he's practically old enough to sell. I know there's something wrong with him, so I wouldn't have put him on the market for a new home. Is what I'm saying.
Sure. And I'm literally getting some pictures ready to share too. But go on,
Perfect.
Holly, if you have some
So
more.
let's see if I have some more. So here's another. See that? How
Yeah.
that stringy look. When you're looking to buy a seahorse, there's their grow out tank. Let's see if I can find. they need a body. You want to see a nice full body and that they're active. See how round she is, see how filled out, not
Yep.
stringy. So that's the look you want to look for. That's a healthy seahorse. Because the stringy ones, well, like you were saying, Kelly, sometimes maybe you can save them, but most likely not at that
Right.
point.
Absolutely. All right. We ready for me to try to share?
Yeah, let me get out of here.
All right. Hang on. Let me get this ready. I gotta turn the light off for this because I can't see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna keep myself blacked out because I look crazy. But let me get it up. Hang on. All right. So let's see if we can.
One thing
these.
too, and another reason I would recommend going with a reputable breeder if you want to get seahorses, is I have seen stores that had basically about 10 to 12-week-old hippocampus erectus that they were selling as dwarf seahorses. I've seen hippocampus combs fry that were they're actually smaller species that were about 3 inches long. They were selling those as dwarf seahorses. In other words, they didn't know what they had, and that has been very
Are you
common.
ready for me to turn on your sharing, Kelly?
Yeah. Tell me. Can you see the picture?
I can. Yeah, I'll turn it on for you.
Okay. All right. So these two right here. These three. Excuse me. These are the first three fry that I grew to adults. This is when they're say, oof. I'm gonna say 9 months old, maybe. So these are not fry by all means. They're healthy seahorses. This is the size that I would sell them. Okay, so when you are buying a seahorse, as Holly was saying, you want to see full bodies where they're not sunk in on the sides. See how he's fat. They're fat little shits, right? And please don't pay attention to the tank because that's one of the reasons I didn't keep many fry alive is because I was trying to raise them with macros and all that craziness. But bottom line is that's little Cheryl and that's little Wayne. And anyways, bottom line is this is the point where I would sell my seahorses is when they were this big, about 3-4 inches and full bodied, ready to go. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Again, just showing these are some that I kept, but when I did the next batches, this is the size I would sell them at. You want fat little seahorses. Even if they're little, it's okay. They got to be fat though, not the stringy stuff that Holly said. This guy's not as fat, or girl, a guy, who knows. But you see the sides aren't sunk in and the spines make it kind of look sunk in, but he's not. And he's got the rounded appearance and yeah, just the neck too, huge neck instead of that stringy stuff that Holly was showing. But I did want to show this is what they look like when they're newborns, right? So they all come out looking like little stringy, what the heck are these, right? And there will be some that don't develop as we've discussed. But that's why it's on the breeder to make sure that they get to this stage before they're sold. We're still going to come back to how Kayla can possibly, go forward. But I'm just saying, when you see a seahorse that looks like this, they're likely too young. Let's see what other pictures. These are my guys at say a month old.
And
So
they're
they
so cute.
and they still they still look stringy, but you can see they're starting to get that neck.
They're
And
getting a shape.
the body I would say doesn't develop until they're weaned on the mysis. I
Yes.
feel like they stay these stringy looking things as they're eating enriched Ortemia because it's not even good enough for them. And then when they get on to frozen foods, all of a sudden they bulk up. But again, that's on the breeder, not on the buyer. So we'll talk more about where to buy. And this is another. See, this is where there's this guy right here, he was my Siri boy. Oh, that's
Look at him.
But he is, I would say, 3 months old, maybe 2 months. So this is before they're weaned onto mysis. You can see the stringy guy behind him. That
Yes.
guy might not make it, right? This guy, you can see how he was bulking up. And again, this is on breeders to do the right thing and sell the good seahorses. But and there he was at a younger age. You see
Mm-hmm.
a series starting to form, and you see he was stringy like that.
Yeah,
They do
start
start
out
like
that
that.
way.
Yeah, but it's just
They're not ready to sell at that point, is the
that's
thing.
right, because you don't know if they're going to be non-developers. And this was just little Cheryl because she was my first seahorse that I raised to adulthood, and look how fat she is. She was such a little wonderful seahorse,
The
and I
first one
think
is
that
always
was
the
it.
one you remember.
Mhm.
And this picture is for later, just to show you guys. I have this full tank now that I've copied off Holly and gotten them all this cool stuff, and they still hang out on the damn char chamber. But all right, I'm done sharing now. You can stop that.
All righty, let me turn that back off.
And so I would say that the things you should look for when you're purchasing a seahorse is that they do have that rounded shape in the body, that they do have a thick neck, right? That they when if you're buying it from a store, one of the things you can do is say, could you please feed them, right? Because if they pull out some live artemia, you need to say, wait a minute, they're supposed to
Frozen
be eating
mysis.
frozen mysis, right? And I've had stores pull out live artemia and be like, look how much they eat. Well, unless you're willing to pay for and continue to culture artemia, raise them to adults and enrich them and keep them clean and continue that throughout their life, you're looking for a struggle if they're not weaned onto frozen mysis. So make sure they're eating frozen foods. Make sure they have a rounded appearance. And what other questions would you guys say they should ask?
I would say, yeah, where did they come from?
Yeah.
A lot of stores will tell you, and if they were actually captive bred by a reputable breeder, they will know who the person is or who. And that's really your best bet, because a responsible breeder will be willing to help you learn and help you if you have questions. And the only two big ones that I know here in the USA are Alyssa's Seahorse Savvy and also Ocean Rider in Hawaii. Those two are the reliable big ones I know about. But I think there's hobbyists, like myself and everyone here, that will raise them and sell them sometimes. And that's a good source if you know someone that has them, or or a store that gets them that way.
What?
Yeah, it depends. There's not that many options unless it's like in our area we have marine aquarium groups and we meet once a month. And so, of course, if somebody's wanting to get seahorses, the first person they're going to ask is me because they know I'm a seahorse nerd. But it's one of those things. Be careful who you buy from. Make sure you're either getting it from a reputable breeder that's well known and has a good reputation, or if you're going to go with somebody else, make sure they're a darn good friend and they know what they're doing. Because it's too easy to get burned, and I've seen it happen so many times.
I have a few comments. I apologize, Holly, if you can stall for me for just a second. I'm trying to deal with a kid.
Oh, okay.
Any other thoughts?
All right. So, basically, we've kind of gone over that about, where to go to find them. Uh, Ocean Rider and Alyssa's Seahorse Savvy are both online. They ship. And the one thing you'll notice is, compared to if you go to the local fish store and buy them, it's a lot more expensive to buy from one of the big breeders. but to me, it's worth it because the seahorses I've purchased from Alyssa myself, the seahorses arrive healthy. Like Kelly said, they're nice and plump, they're filled out, they're a good size.
They're
Mine,
starving as always.
mine were eating within an hour or two when I put them in the tank and let them explore a bit. And they're friendly. They're used to being in a tank. So they're used to being looked at. So, they just have a better chance at survival. And if you do have a problem, most of these breeders will stand behind, their seahorses and replace them for you if you've done everything right as far as putting them in the tank and getting ready for them, and you still have a problem, they'll work with you to replace.
Couple comments, and I appreciate you, Holly, because I know it's like, oh my God, she just put me on the spot.
I'm like, I have nothing else to say.
You're really great at this, though. I will say, my hybrid seahorses, at the time that I purchased them, Alyssa Seahorse Savvy was not selling them directly. She was selling them through stores. So as Holly was saying, asking who the breeder was, sometimes it's Alyssa Seahorse Savvy.
Yeah.
So it's not wrong to purchase from a store. It's just about asking the right questions. Like Holly said, where did they come from? If they look good, if they're not in the system with other fish, like you don't want a seahorse that's in a system with other fish, right? Because then you're just asking for trouble. But if they're in a standalone situation, if they look really healthy and fat, they eat frozen mysis, you ask where they're from and they can answer that question, then you're good to go, right? Because again, I bred seahorses and you could buy them from the store. So it just depends, because I wasn't comfortable at that point with shipping. And so that's where I sold them to. The other thing is local reef clubs. If you're part of one, if you find somebody who's breeding seahorses within it, usually if they're part of the club, they're not going to sell you lemons, or they're not going to sell you underdeveloped seahorses, because they're part of this thing, and they'll answer for it if the seahorses don't do well. So I would say none of those things are wrong. The seahorses I currently have, I've got 2 from Ocean Rider. I've got 2 from Dan. No, I'm sorry. I have 4 from Ocean Rider. I have 2 from Dan. I've got 2 from Vincent, who is a home breeder. And I've got 1 from Holly, who is a home breeder. All my seahorses are doing great. I got them from different sources, but I trusted all of those sources. I knew they were all captive bred. That's key. And, so I would just say, as far as, where to buy, it does depend on where you're located. Ray's going to tell you something completely different from me because he's in Canada. And, people in Australia will have a different opinion. But it's just trusting your source, I think, is the bottom line. Knowing as much as you can, doing the research, having the information, and then making sure they look good. This little guy up in the corner of our screen, this yellow guy, was one of Lucy's. And that is one I believe she raised with the Siri up in the beside me right here.
Yeah.
And that's a little adolescent that was ready for sale. But they should be, I'm going to say, they should be 3 inches. Okay, so shoot for 3
at
inches,
least, I'd say,
with their tail uncurled, right? 3 to 4 inches. So if they've got their tail curled up, they might only look 2, but with their tail, they'd be 3 to 4. Yeah, and they should have big necks, big stomachs, not be caved in on the sides, and eating frozen mysis. That's my 2 cents on all of that. What do you guys have? Anything else?
One thing to think about too, when you're buying from a fish store, is many fish stores run flow-through systems. Seahorses do not have the most progressive illness and prevention. And if you do not want to buy seahorses, they're being run through a flow-through system where they're getting major influx of wild caught. They could be any kind. They could be tangs. They could be clowns, whatever. So basically, if they're in a flow-through system, they're already being contaminated, and that's something to think about too when you go look to buy.
Well, that's like I said, if you buy
Yeah.
from a store, ask where they came from and make sure they're in a standalone system. Because if they're mixed in with the other fish, like Cheryl said, their immunity just can't usually handle it. Then again, if you're, I mean, seriously, if you're looking to set up a tank with other fish and such, and that seahorse is there in that tank, I would say ask how long they've been there. Make sure they've been there for quite a bit. It still isn't a guarantee, and I don't suggest it by all means. But if that's what you're aiming to do, then and you're willing to take that risk of mixing with other fish, then you know that if they've lasted, they've lasted. Some seahorses do. I don't know. But and Vincent said local breeder if you can, better price and make it worthwhile for them to continue breeding. Exactly. If you don't support local breeders, they're not going to keep breeding, and then you do have to pay those outrageous prices from the big time breeders. And again, like Holly said, paying more isn't wrong because you're paying for how much it costs to raise those seahorses. It costs a lot
Yeah,
to
it
get
does.
those seahorses to a healthy stage.
Very
And
labor
someone
intensive.
and someone like Alyssa Seahorse Savvy is doing it on a commercial scale. And so, you know, it costs them a lot to get those seahorses healthy and ready for your tank. Nothing wrong with paying that price. But I agree also with Vincent that if you support local breeders, they'll continue breeding because they can't if they can't sell the seahorses. What was the Bonnie question that you had up, Holly? I missed it and then you took it away.
Oh, okay. Let me go back because I can't see
Sorry.
it anymore. It's about the frozen brine shrimp.
I think so. Okay.
Yeah.
So
The
doesn't the frozen brine shrimp or frozen mysis have to be fed a great diet as brine shrimp in itself is not nutritional enough to keep them growing correctly? Who wants to take that on first, or shall I?
Well,
There's lots of people that have fed nothing but frozen brine or frozen mysis and been successful. There's also a lot of people that will occasionally, in my case, usually about once a week, I fed enriched live brine shrimp. Brine shrimp have plenty of protein in them. What they don't have is the DHA that seahorses need because they cannot manufacture it for themselves. So we feed, we enrich the live brine with an enrichment that includes a high DHA component. Theoretically, those seahorses that get that occasional feeding should have better odds of getting to a ripe old life, but it's not absolutely necessary.
Agree.
And
But I think there's two things we need to unpack here in this question. There's two different topics or things that we need to discuss. Because Ray, you're making every good point about you can just feed a captive bred bought seahorse that's an adult or adolescent that you've bought. You can feed them only frozen mysis and succeed. And you made the point giving them a nutritional live treat or an enriched live treat will help them even more, but it's not necessary. But let's go back to brine frozen versus live, and then also brine shrimp versus mysis. Because you're talking about frozen mysis. You cannot, I'm going to make this statement. You cannot sustain a seahorse on frozen brine shrimp. It wouldn't work. Why, Cheryl?
why why that doesn't work?
Why would someone not be able to feed their seahorses frozen brine shrimp and succeed?
Well, first of all, if you want to feed frozen brine shrimp, you're going to need to use a hatching cone or some kind of hatching device to hatch them out. Then you're going to need to sterilize them. Then you're going to need
frozen. Whoa. Sorry,
not raising them frozen.
I know, but that's where it gets confusing with the question. And Vincent just said, I feed frozen brine shrimp on occasions a few times a month. It's good if they will eat frozen brine shrimp in case you run out of mysis. And that's true because mine won't eat frozen brine shrimp. But my point is, that question was double barreled. It comes down to, if you're talking about live foods, mysids are great. Brine shrimp don't have what they need, as Ray explained, so you have to enrich them. Then, if you're talking about frozen foods, again, mysis can sustain, brine shrimp cannot. However, it can be a good treat, as Vincent pointed out. So I just wanted to make that distinction, that it really depends on if you're talking about frozen or live. And, you know, bottom line is, it's I don't know what. Go on with your thoughts,
I
guys.
propagate both true saltwater mysid shrimp. I do occasionally. The only time I keep raised baby brine shrimp is when I've got new fry, and everything else. Then it's like look at the labels and look at what the DHA and EPA ratings are of the food source that you're looking at. We now have gotten. I'm losing my voice. We've now got access to the San Francisco Bay is actually a saltwater product that can be used. It's not as strong as some of the ones that are raised farther north, but it will still work. So will krill. We now have access to true Arctic krill that is a saltwater product.
See, my seahorses won't touch them though. They won't touch krill. So, and I did kind of get off base because I want to talk the frozen versus live. But Bonnie's actual question was, oh, I lost it. Doesn't brine shrimp need to be fed a great diet because it's not nutritional enough? And I think Ray answered that. Basically, they lack the DHA. You can't keep a seahorse going long term on just brine shrimp, whether it be frozen or live. We use brine shrimp when seahorses are fry because it's easier, right? It's easy to cultivate in your home. It's much more, like Cheryl likes to use copepods, but imagine buying that many copepods. They're harder to cultivate, in my opinion. Brine shrimp, you can do it in a freaking 2 liter. But to answer your question, Bonnie, absolutely, it has to be enriched.
Yes.
And we
Brine
have
shrimp
different.
has to be enriched if you're going to use it.
I'm laughing because I was literally getting ready to break down a grow out tank that I had for seahorse fry and completely clean it because I go through and completely sterilize everything.
Mm-hmm.
Dang, if it isn't full of copepods.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, in reference to Vincent's comment, it's still okay to feed them brine shrimp, whether it be frozen or live.
Yeah.
It's
Just
not
don't
going to hurt
rely
them.
on it.
Yeah, it just
It's
can't
not-
be the staple
Well,
diet.
It's like giving your dog cookies. Think of it that
Yeah.
way. It's a treat.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a snack, but it won't sustain them.
Yeah, the thing is, the reason we enrich the brine shrimp that we feed out is that one of their first foods is to improve the nutritional value of the brine shrimp. And it's one of those things where we're just trying to, this is why I like incorporating actual saltwater stuff into their diet with my seahorses. I mean, I've had them live a long time and do very well. And I'm really picky. In fact, there was a research study that was done. They took a fry from several different adults, mixed them up, counted them out, and they had 4 groups. One was fed strictly a baby brine, newly hatched baby brine shrimp. Next group was, and then they started increasing the HUFA and DPA contents in it, and so they had 4 different groups. The first group that was fed the one without any enrichment were mostly dead within the first week. Ultimately, what they found out is as they improved the diet, their success rate improved dramatically. And
I saw Bonnie's question. I can't wait to jump to it. But before we jump to it, I'm sorry, Cheryl, were you not done? Go ahead.
I'm
Were
sorry?
you finished? Did I cut you off or were you finished?
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
you're fine.
Okay. All right, Ray, you said for juvies and adults, seahorses live, adult brine shrimp only, newborns useless for them. What do you mean?
Newborn for juvies and adults it would take so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not practical. But the biggest thing is most seahorses, not all, but most adults wouldn't even be
They won't
interested
take
in them.
them.
Yeah, they're too
True.
tiny. The seahorses start getting big and they want bigger food.
Yum yum. Hey, can you put up Bonnie's question because I think it's a
Yeah,
good one. She's
dwarf, I
calling
thought
us.
too.
She's calling us on our stuff here.
Mhm.
She said the dwarf species eat only live brine shrimp. So how do
Mhm.
you enrich the live brine shrimp for dwarf species? And how come people are able to keep them alive feeding just live brine shrimp?
They can keep them alive for a period of time, but it does not mean they're going to live a normal full life also if they're nutritionally deficient. Yeah, Ray just posted.
Well, Ray, what did you say? Tell us live.
I'm still typing.
Oh, well, talk instead of type, silly.
Okay. But the thing is, what you're looking for is a varied diet that is high in things that saltwater species carries, that freshwater species like humans don't want. And it makes a big difference if you enhance their nutritional plane as you're working with them. You'll get a
And
more
what Ray said, basically, since he doesn't want to say it out loud, is that first find the enrichment that has DHA, then wait for the brine shrimp to grow to instar 2 stage, where they develop the digestive tract and then gut load it for 12 hours, and then do a water change and enrich, and then go a second 12 hours. But here's the thing: her actual question was, how come some people can keep dwarf seahorses alive with just a live brine shrimp, no enrichment, and people do? And my question, attaching to Bonnie's, is could that be possibly the reason why dwarf seahorses don't live as long? And also, they couldn't eat larger foods because they're too little. So maybe we're feeding them what we can, because we don't have the ocean at our disposal. So we're feeding what we can, and that might be why they only live a year or 2 or 3, right? I mean,
I've
seriously.
never seen anybody keep them for 2 years on non-enriched live brine.
Okay, so most people that keep dwarf seahorses enrich them, enrich the Artemia.
Mhm.
Yes. For
Okay.
the ones that don't enrich, some of them have made it a year. So I personally have never come across anybody that's kept any for 2 years without enriching.
So that's the bottom line is, and I guess that's the
They need
answer.
to
If
enrich.
they're not enriching, they don't keep them very long. And that's the thing.
I would think, yeah, it's the same as we do raising fry.
Right.
We enrich the baby brine shrimp and then sterilize it with peroxide before feeding it to the baby seahorses. And dwarfs are that same size pretty much as our fry. So I think it's pretty much the same game.
That's in the video I made about setting up for dwarf seahorses. I talk about the fact that Dan
It's
literally
like
says
permanent fry.
they're permanent fry. That's what they are.
Yeah.
And I do personally know people that have kept dwarf seahorses with just brine shrimp and didn't know anything about enrichment. But again, as we were discussing, they didn't succeed long term, right? So it just depends on what you're trying to do. But enrichment is the key if you're going to use brine shrimp in any circumstance, unless you're using it as just a treat like Vincent does. That's fine too, frozen or live, but it's fine. It's just, it can't be their staple diet without enrichment, I guess is the main point I'm trying to drive home. But anyways, what else, guys?
Yeah, we just need salt water.
Right, yeah. There you go. And I would love to feed my seahorses live feeds all the time. I would love to, but it's just not practical.
It's not realistic.
It's not. And we do have U.S. mysids, Herbert U.S. mysids, who will ship an incredible amount of lovely mysids, but keeping them, cultivating them gets really crazy. Thank you, Bonnie, for the question.
Yeah.
If you don't ask questions,
you.
we just sit here and talk about whatever we want all night.
Yeah.
We need your questions. Go ahead, Ollie.
We do. No, I was just agreeing with you. So here's the next.
Yeah.
So
ahead, Ollie.
Zen Ginger says, when you say sterilize with peroxide, is that standard 3%? And do you dilute it in RO or anything? We do dilute
Yes,
it.
you do.
I'll
Yes, you
let
have to
Ray
dilute it.
take over.
Well, at this point in time, I can't even tell you how much to add into it. First of all, because it's been a while since I've raised fry and haven't had to do that. But second of all, it was to the point where I'd been doing it for so many years, I just dumped in a certain amount by eye and didn't bother measuring.
And I can
So,
tell you, I learned from Ray, and Ray and Dan helped me convert, because what I actually used was 40 volume clear peroxide from the beauty store.
Oh,
I only needed to use 5 milliliters for a whole liter of water, so it lasted me longer. And the way you do it is the first, what is it? The first minute or first 3 minutes, you use a bubbler, right? And then another couple minutes, just regular, not bubbling. Do you guys remember?
I mean, once you put the peroxide in,
Yeah,
I'm looking up the
well, different
instructions
people have
now.
different-
perfect.
like I started off,
It's been a while for
well,
me too.
the enrichment. See, if I'm all through the enrichment
Mm-hmm.
and got my second stage done, or I'm only going to do one stage,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't bother taking the brine out at that point. I just dump in the amount of peroxide I need, and I keep aerating it for 5 minutes, and then I rinse them under the tap till they're good and clear, and then feed them to the seahorses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't.
If
I
you're
mean,
going,
I guess I could look in my notes, but it's been a while since I raised the baby.
on my brine shrimp page, it's probably got the instructions for it, but I haven't even gone to the page for so many years now.
Oh, here's what it was. It was 5 minutes, 3.5 minutes with no aeration.
I never did that.
And then
The
the
only time I
rest
do
of
no
them was
aeration
aerated.
is when I'm gonna hatch out some, and I soak them first for an hour to hydrate them.
So,
I
Ray, you're
used
saying you did not
40
use peroxide
volume.
after they were born?
Pardon me?
You didn't use peroxide after they were born? The
I
Artemia.
didn't
Not,
either.
no.
I only did
Oh,
it
wow.
before I fed the
prefer to do it
seahorses.
before. Yeah.
Wait,
If
time
you
out.
do it then,
Time
you
out.
still got to do it later, because when you're doing the enrichment is process is just a prime source to grow bacteria.
yeah.
They just love that kind of a culture. So, in my opinion, I always felt it was much better for my seahorses and safer if I used the peroxide before I fed them to the seahorses. And if I'm going to do it then, I felt that it wasn't really needed to do after I hatched them.
I feel
Now,
exactly the same way.
I use bleach to sterilize the cysts, and my hatch out method means an hour of soak time just to get the cysts to round out properly. Then I add the bleach to it, and after the bleach treatment, then I put them in the proper hatching water and hatch them out after a day. you harvest, and then you can either on-grow them or you can feed them as is, because at that point they'll still have some of the egg sac left. So it depends on just what your own requirements are for what you're feeding them.
Well,
I prefer to grow them out, and usually I hatched out way more than what I needed for feeding. I hatched out enough for a week because they don't grow enough in a week to make it so that you can't feed dwarfs or even fried of regular seahorses that are a few weeks old. So I would on grow them and then just pull out each day what I need to enrich only that portion. But in the meantime, I'm only hatching out once a week or so.
so a couple comments. First of all, I personally use the peroxide, and it's been a minute for me too, guys. I've got to find the actual instructions for you, and I will
got
link them when I
mine.
find them. Well, I was gonna say, but I don't know. It's a little different from based on what you're saying, unless I'm misunderstanding. Because what Dan always taught me is that no matter how fancy schmancy your hatchery is, it's freaking dirty. Okay.
Mhm.
I use a 2-liter bottle. Any scratch in that 2-liter, bacteria can grow. Artemia are just dirty. And the bottom line is, I would use peroxide after they were hatched. I would put them in the peroxide, and I need to do this video with Dan. I keep meaning to. We've just been so busy. I would use the peroxide after they were hatched to clean them, and then put them in enrichment, and then feed them.
And
And
then
I do
clean
that
them again.
sometimes.
You
I
didn't
don't.
See, I'm with Ray. The way I did and what I found my notes. So I used 40 volume clear developer from the beauty store, and I used 60 milliliters in 1 liter of water, 5 minutes soaking, 1.5 minutes with aeration. With an
But
air.
you're talking about once they're born.
No, right before I fed them. I'd hatch them out. I'd
So
do
they're
like
hatched.
Ray
They're born.
said. Well, no, but wait. So I didn't do it twice. I only did it once. So I didn't do it after they were born. I did it after I fed them, after they were enriched, right
Okay.
before I fed the seahorses.
You're confusing the shit out of me. How are they eating if they're not born? How are they being enriched?
No.
Not
You
born?
hatch them, but they went from hatching to enriching. After
Okay.
the enriching, I cleaned them with peroxide.
So maybe it's me. Maybe I'm crazy, but you guys, the confusing part to me about what you're saying is I keep saying, so you enrich them after they're born, and you guys all keep saying no. If they're hatched, they're born. They're alive. They're moving.
We're saying no, we didn't do it your way, but there's nothing wrong with doing it your way.
I know, but
as long as you do it after they're enriched also.
All I'm asking is, with all of your enrichment methods, was it after the Artemia were hatched?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so maybe my saying
after they're
was
enriched,
confusing.
not before they're enriched. It's after they're enriched.
I know, but you guys are comparing and contrasting whether they're enriched yet or not. I'm just saying, were they born? Were they hatched? Were they alive? Not eggs anymore.
Yeah.
And you guys are all saying no, and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? You have to do it after they're hatched. Okay.
I sterilized the cysts before they hatch.
See, and I know yours is different, Ray, but I know that the way that Dan taught me and Holly is whether it's before or after enrichment, you got to clean them after they get out of the container that they were hatched in. So after they're hatched, I was saying born, after they're hatched, whether you enrich them first or not, they need a peroxide treatment at some point after they're hatched to clean them from the disgusting mess that was the hatchery. That's what I thought.
I would say, though, they need to be cleaned after they're enriched because the enrichment is yucky.
Yeah,
that's why I did it after that. I think the enrichment contaminates them to some extent.
You can do it both times.
You can. But I would just say, I'm sorry, guys, if this is very confusing for you watching. it was confusing for me too, because we're using different words and it gets combusted. But I would just say, I'm going to find the actual instructions, post them in the comment section, because what the key is that it's important to use peroxide to clean your artemia. That's the bottom line. Ray does it a certain way, all these different ways. But I do it even if I buy large adult artemia from a store, because they're sitting in those containers. It's nasty. Artemia are picking up everything in the water. Could be anything. God, bacteria. Ugh. So if I even buy live artemia, and I do it before enrichment, Holly does it after, whatever. But bottom line is, I clean my artemia with peroxide. I'll have to come up with the exact instructions, but it is really important. If you're raising fry, if you're not using peroxide to clean your artemia, you're going to run into problems. Cheryl, you got any comments on any of this?
I guess I do my eggs and brine shrimp completely different, because as soon as the majority of the hatch is there, it's soaked in a hydrogen peroxide solution. What that does is all the hatch crap from the eggs, it floats up to the top, and you put a light down at the bottom of like a flashlight, and all the newly hatched baby brine shrimp all collect down at the bottom of the light, and it takes you about 30 seconds to undo a hatching cone. It's really quick. So
But then you put them in peroxide, right?
Did I put them in what?
Peroxide.
No, I wait until I do that individually with each feeding.
So you enrich.
And Vince does the same thing as we do. We all do it that way after the enrichment.
Yeah.
No, I gotcha. I think the confusion was just that I was saying born versus hatched, but it's fine.
Well, the thing is, they don't go get a mouth and they can't eat for the first couple of days. So clean them up and let them sit. They can't eat anyway.
Yep. Well, what I will do, folks, is I will find the actual instructions from Dan, and we'll just leave it at that, because I think we're just circling around and around. And maybe it's me.
Well, one of the reasons I found that tank with so many copepods in there is I've moved a lot to feeding live saltwater food. And copepods are an excellent source for newborn fry. And I've found basically anything that makes it through the first 2 weeks, which is usually everything but 1 or 2, they make it and grow out. So I think that has a big impact on them.
Gotcha.
I used copepods too with mine, because what happened for me when my Seahorse was having fry was that he surprised me every time. And so I did not have brine shrimp ready for the hatching.
Sure.
But I found that I could keep copepod cultures in buckets really easily. And then I always had something ready when the baby seahorses were born. Before I started the brine shrimp hatching, at least they had something to eat.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where I'm always looking for ways to improve my nutritional plane for my seahorses. And we've seen a lot of advancements in the last 20 years that really have made a difference. But I'm still on that roller coaster I'm always looking for a better way to do something with them. And nutrition is just one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the way to do it, Cheryl. That's why we love your expert advice, is because you're always looking for new ways, and you're doing great.
Okay. Some of my new ways that you don't hear about, you wouldn't want to try. They didn't work.
So Bonnie asked, do the manufacturers of frozen mysis use peroxide to clean them before they are frozen? I highly doubt it. Some of them flash freeze. Some of them do different things. But don't forget, you're talking about the difference between someone hatching artemia in whatever circumstance they're in their home, versus someone collecting live mysids from the ocean and flash freezing them so that they contain all the good gut stuff that they just ate, right? So, and mysids are just different than Artemia, in my opinion. Ray posted a link. Great. We'll share that.
That link has down near the bottom of the page, it's got a section there that has copied Dan's instructions.
Awesome. Perfect. Actually, Holly, I realized since you're the one running it, you got a copy.
I was
and
going to
paste
say,
it in
I
the
don't know
comments.
how to share it. Well, how do I share it from there?
So
Do I have
just,
to go to the site and then screen share it?
no. Just go to the comment of Ray's in our chat.
Mm-hmm.
Use your I don't know how to say it. Use
Oh,
your
just copy it and paste it.
copy
somehow?
and paste it. And yeah. I was about to do it, but I wasn't able to. But anyways,
I'm not ever good at that.
that's perfect. And I
There
would
we go.
I think the confusion again was just me not understanding what you guys were saying. So no big deal. But for Bonnie's question about the manufacturers of mysids, you think that it's because they're mysids and not brine shrimp? Or do you think it's just because us doing it in our homes is different than someone doing it large scale, collecting them and flash freezing them? What are your guys' thoughts?
Well, I
Or
remember
maybe they are
Dan,
using
I
peroxide. What do we
remember
know?
Dan telling me, like, for instance, Dan told me that I couldn't clean the copepods. It would kill them, the peroxide.
Ah, yeah.
And some things, I think some organisms can't take it, but I don't know anything about the mysis or how that's done. Cheryl probably would know. Like,
Cheryl, can mysids
do you
handle
clean
peroxide?
mysis in peroxide when you're feeding them?
And when it's live, yeah.
So they can take it. So those you would clean in peroxide before feeding.
Yeah, the
live.
thing, the advantage is peroxide is basically it's not doesn't kill most of this stuff, but it definitely eliminates little pests that might be on them and following them around, so to speak.
Well, and that's the difference, I think. I think to answer your question, in my mind, and I'm not a scientist here, but in my mind, it's because Artemia don't really eat, right? They take stuff up. I don't know the scientific way they take stuff up, but they got their little filter thingies going on, if you've never seen an Artemia in a microscope. And that's how they take up stuff, whether it be enrichment, whether it be the nasties in the water, whether it be whatever. They're literally filtering it into themselves with their little flying little wands or whatever. Whereas mysids eat, right? So I'm not as worried about what's on a mysid as I am what's on an Artemia because of the way they take up food, if that makes, or take up stuff in the water.
When I'm feeding live Artemia or something like, not Artemia, but line shrimp, brine shrimp, not brine shrimp. I'm awake. I'm just getting late, I can tell. When I'm feeding mysid shrimp and it's live, I just put them in a solution and let them do it. The problem that you have is the Artemia. You can enrich them, but it's still going to have some limited efficacy in my from at least from the research that I've done and that has been done. It's not truly an optimal food source compared to copepods for them.
Gotcha. And I think Zen asked if there's any powdered or pearled foods.
Yeah, like first bites or golden pearls in fresh water that seahorse fries will eat. No. Got to feed them the live stuff to start.
Yep,
And then
they're a pain in the boutoir.
You wean them to frozen mysis. And then when you do that, you're feeding them like 6 times a day. The frozen mysis, it's a pain. And you have to clean up what they don't eat every time. They're very labor intensive.
Holly, don't take down Kayla's question.
I didn't want to forget it, so I put it up.
Please don't take it down. But Ray, you said you've had some batches that didn't eat for 2.5 months. The only time I ever succeeded with fry is if I had them weaned onto frozen mysis within 6 weeks. Period. End of story. But you succeeded when they didn't eat for 2.5 months? Frozen.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Wow. And it turned out well?
Well, they got to the 6 month stage where I could sell them.
Wow.
Some of mine were I had a few, yeah, some of the ones I want to say that I have now that I raised took longer. Took like 8, 12 weeks before they were fully on frozen mysis.
Well, see, you guys are making me feel justified because when I told Dan and Cheryl, hey, these guys won't eat frozen mysis, they just won't, they would tell me, tough love, make them eat
Some
it.
are
And I feel,
stubborn.
I can't do it.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Whatever works, go for it.
That's true, Ray.
Yeah.
That's
Just
the bottom
keep
line.
trying. Just keep trying until they either take it or they're dead.
Don't say that.
But
right.
that's how it has to be. I mean,
Moving
because
right
it is a
along.
life or death. If they don't transition, they won't
That's
make
true.
it. So
It
they
is
have
life or death if they
favorite-
don't.
My favorite story about a baby seahorse that was trying to figure out how to catch what it thought was a live shrimp. And I use the circular tubs for nurseries. So everything goes in a circle. And here's this tiny piece of frozen shrimp. And it's floating along. And here comes one of my little babies. And she flips over on her side and she's slowly circling the tank with her prize that she's working on catching. But she hasn't realized that she doesn't have to catch it because it's not a brine shrimp. It doesn't hop away.
Right.
She doesn't know that yet. And she keeps slowly getting closer and closer and closer. And this took like 5 minutes. She finally gets up there and all of a sudden she's got it.
Yeah. They're funny to watch because they do. When you transition them to frozen food, they stalk it. Like,
They hunt it.
And I was laughing so hard I fell out of my chair.
Yeah.
Because just watching her do that. Because at first I thought, what was wrong? I was thinking, what's wrong with her? Then it dawned on me, she's trying to catch the frozen food before it gets away.
Yeah, get away.
Yep.
No, that's one thing I miss about raising fry. I miss watching the babies because they are so
dumb
cute.
things they do.
The funniest stuff.
Or the ones that decide, okay, I'm big, I'm strong, I can hitch to the return now.
Oh, yeah.
The pump wasn't plugged in.
There you go. Okay, so let's go back to Kayla. I want to first of all answer a question before we end tonight, and also, maybe give her some advice on what to do going forward in her current situation. So her question was, would you recommend putting plastic plants in for more hitching posts? Thoughts?
Yes, that's pretty much all I use is artificial.
Mm-hmm.
I only use plastic plants. I don't have real plants. Everything I use in my tanks is artificial decor just because it's easier for me to keep clean and deal with.
And I am getting ready to share a couple of more pictures. If we could. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, Chris does.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Chris is here.
Yeah. So Chris says, Kayla, I'd recommend artificial plants if you want spare extra hitches. You may need to pull them out and clean them from algae, hydrate growth, etc. And that's how I do mine. When I send stuff to the bleach bucket, usually once a week or two. I rotate stuff out of extras of the stuff I really like I'll buy two, so that while one plant is getting cleaned, I have another one to put in its place.
Okay, so real quick, can I share real quick, guys? If that's okay.
I'll turn.
Let me try to do it.
On. Let me know when you're ready.
Wait, I don't think I did it right. Hang on.
No, I saw it for a second.
All right, here we go.
There we go. Are you ready? Here
Yep.
we go.
Okay, so first of all, I told you guys, my guys like to hitch to the dam returns.
Yeah.
There you go. They love that. And the Robert King char chamber. Let me make sure I'm going the right way. I'm not. Hang on. Here we go. And I copied Holly and got them a saloon. They don't go through it though, Holly.
They don't. Yours. Well, maybe they haven't figured it out yet. But mine
Maybe
love
not.
that. They love the doors.
I also got them a fish friend since we can't have real fish in the tank. They got a turtle. And this isn't the picture I wanted to show because this gal right here actually found this guy and hitched on his neck and stayed there forever. She loved it. And then I'm just showing that I made my tank like complete. I started adding artificial decorations just to spruce it up because my tank's very bare, very boring because I'm trying to get them to breed, and being very bare and very boring doesn't help that. But I didn't want a bunch of stuff in the way. I wanted to get the fry. And so since they haven't given me fry yet, I'm starting to decorate it up. So they've got some more colorful stuff. We'll see what happens with that. And I think that's about it. Yeah. All right. I'm done sharing.
Also, if you want to get like a realistic look like in the ocean, there are companies that manufacture artificial hitches that work really well for seahorses that look like live coral.
Yes.
And I've got several of them. They're easy to clean.
Cheryl, when you're later on, maybe tomorrow or something, can you share in the Seahorse Whisperer group on Facebook? Just share the links to, because I can't remember the name of the company that everybody like Lucy recommended. It was
it's Ocean Aquaria.
Ocean Aquaria, yeah.
Ocean Aquaria.
Yeah.
And they actually have a seahorse section specifically with seahorses specifically with hitches for seahorses.
Yeah.
Yeah. I use all kinds of stuff. I'm looking through my stuff so I can find there's something I have that's really cute that I'm looking for that I used when I had the fry. It was a little sign. Oh, and here,
while you're looking,
we go. I got something.
Okay.
But let me turn it to share. Here we go. So they have like this is an example at Christmas time. Like if you go to like PetSmart, Petco, right now they have Halloween stuff at PetSmart. I have some really cute stuff. But I'm always giving them cute little things to hitch to that are artificial.
She changes the decor in her tanks for every holiday.
So here's some reindeer antlers with some juveniles on.
And you thought I was kidding when I said for every holiday.
There's a candy cane. And here's an example. This is a silk plant with one of my little girls hitched on it a while back. And they loved this plant because it would travel. You could see it's not, I didn't have it attached to anything. It would kind of float around the tank and they'd ride it along with it.
Yep, I'm trying to pull up some more pictures real quick. While I'm pulling them up, though,
and here's on the return nozzle, like we were just talking about. This is all the juveniles. And this is an artificial hitch here, just a piece of fake coral that I found on Amazon. Oh, cool. That's one of the 3D pictures. But yeah, so I give them all kinds of just artificial.
And if you do it with the little fry and give them something new to hitch to, you're going to end up with all of them hitched to each other, all hitched to one object.
Yeah. Oh, here was one of my favorites, and the seahorses love this thing, the Christmas tree. Was always a favorite with them for some reason. They really love that Christmas tree. And yeah, there's the antlers.
Yep, you can do all sorts of different stuff. All
Here's
right,
a
my
little
turn, Holly.
here's a
Oh, go
cute
ahead.
little sign they have, Atlantis. Sign with some little plants. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and go back to where I can see
All right,
yours, Kat.
let me share real quick. And I was just going to show you guys. First off, go ahead.
You
Let me know
ready?
when it's sharing. Yep. So here's that picture I told you guys about. She fell in love with the turtle
Oh,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
stays on the turtle constantly. And then I did want to show you, sorry, it's from my phone, but I've done natural tanks, right? This is all real stuff. It's not, you don't have to just do artificial. This is all macro, right? All of it. I did
Mm-hmm.
still do bare bottom because I just prefer bare bottom, but this also, this was my first tank. That's all live macro and gorgonians. And you see the seahorse there. So I'm done sharing, but my only point was it's just kind of what you want to do, right? I mean, it's what you want to do, but I would say that, let me stop this. Okay. But I would say that the question that you actually asked is if sand is really more difficult, could you use some marbles or something similar?
Oh, yeah,
And
that's an important one.
and the thing is, like Chris said, it becomes a trap for detritus. Like the
Yeah.
reason I like bare bottom is because I can see what's going on. And it makes it kind of difficult to clean because you got to clean the bottom every time. But when I feed, right, I want to be able to get any leftover mysids before, and I'm talking frozen, not live, but before it
Mhm.
gets under a curve and, or in the sand
Uneaten
and
food.
decays. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's just kind of easier with a bare bottom, but you can do sand. You absolutely can. Holly, what were you going to say about that?
Well, because I was noticing Zen Ginger's comment that says if sand is really more difficult, could I use something like marbles or something easy to clean substrate? The thing about anything big like marbles and stuff is it's going to trap the uneaten food. It's going to trap the seahorse poop, the what you want to do is be able to completely clean up after them. And the thing like everybody's saying about bare bottom is you can see the stuff to make sure it's gone. When you're cleaning up, you can see anything that's there. Now sand, I use a little bit of sand, and you can do sand too because it's more dense, and you can vacuum it, with the siphon hose, the thing that you poke down in the sand. And I do that with mine, but the one thing about the sand is when I'm siphoning, it's hard for me to see if there's stuff on the sand or not that they haven't eaten, a piece of uneaten food. And what I'll do when I siphon is I'll hold the siphon after I feed them just a little bit above the sand where I think there might be something, and that way I'm sucking up the loose food and not the sand itself, because it is kind of hard that way. But the areas where I feed the seahorses in the tank that I do have sand in, I only have, like I've said before, one small section of sand, and I don't feed the seahorses there. I feed them near the bare bottom part. So there's less of a chance for their stuff to be in the sand.
Great points, Holly. And what are we talking about under gravel filters, guys? What's this about?
Just use reverse flow ones. Don't use the regular under gravel.
What's the difference with reverse flow ones?
Reverse flow, you're pumping the water through the tube and down underneath the gravel, underneath the plate, and then the water comes up through the gravel and flows upward, so it lessens the chance of pulling the crap into the substrate that's on the filter plate and producing, if you're sucking it down there and the stuff gets in there, it's a bacterial growth situation.
Gotcha. And Kayla said sifting starfish. I actually had one of those in a sanded Seahorse tank, because, that was a way to help avoid any uneaten mysis getting trapped because the starfish would eat it. I did have one of those. Anybody else tried that?
If you're wanting to have it take care of nitrates, then it's no good, because if they're sifting the substrate, there's going to be oxygen getting into the lower levels, and so it won't take care of that last stage of the process.
Well, no, and I agree with you. Maybe I didn't. I just saw the comment and I thought it was still real. I thought it was still talking about sand, having sand in the tank. And like the only reason I don't have sand in my tanks, because I think it's pretty natural. But number one, it's easier if you don't for cleanup. Think mysis and other stuff doesn't get trapped. And so a sifting starfish. Sorry, guys. I'm dealing with like 5 things at once. But a sifting
There's a lot
starfish
of
would
things
help with that.
happening.
Yeah. But so if you were talking about nitrates, I agree with Ray. It wouldn't solve the problem. Okay. I have a sand bottom and was told it was okay to have hermits. But this was also from the seller I got the seahorses from, and a conch snail that the yellow ones love to hitch to, and a sifting starfish.
The sand
So
sifting.
I don't see any problem with any of those things.
No.
Do you
I
guys?
have one hermit left. I started out with hermits. I have one little guy left. And yeah, he's fine. He's fine with the seahorses. I started out years ago with sand and rock and stuff, and went to all bare bottom and all artificial, just because, like I said, I discovered it was easier for me to take care of and clean that way. But I
Yep.
started out with those things, and
It
yeah,
just depends. It just depends on what you want. If you're looking for fry, you want a very basic bare tank. If you're looking for a beautiful tank in your home and you want sand and everything else, you can do that too. Absolutely. And the hermits now, I was told to steer clear of them, and so I never got them. But that just means I can't comment, right? Because I never kept them. Holly didn't have a problem.
Yeah, I had him for years. I even had one that grew. I got a package of them, was what it was, and they were supposed to be all blue-legged hermits, which are tiny little guys, and they never grow big.
Yep.
But somehow in my package, they got I think they call it a stripe-legged hermit crab, and they grow big. And this guy started little, but I only had the seahorse. I didn't have another home for him. So I let him grow. He grew up. He grew big, but he grew up with the seahorses and never hurt them, never bothered them, and everything was fine. I wouldn't suggest any.
Right. I was gonna say Holly got lucky. Holly got really lucky. I would not suggest that.
Was a friend.
Please don't go out and get.
But not on.
Please don't go out.
Would I do that?
Right. Exactly. Don't go out and get any big crabs, because they will pinch and bite the seahorses if they want to. She got lucky. She had a nice one.
He was a nice guy.
Yeah. And I don't even know what you guys are talking about anymore. Sorry. In the comments. Holly,
Well,
have you
so
followed?
I just saw, so this was an interesting comment. So Bonnie says, doesn't beneficial bacteria need a substrate to help keep it going? And it's not necessary, because it depends on what your biomedia is. Like some people use rock or those, like I use bio balls and K1 media for my bio media. So there's different ways to do it. So if you have enough of something else, you don't need sand or substrate at all to keep your biofilter going.
Yeah, I use a combination of K1, and I, of course, have activated carbon, and I have filter sock, a protein skimmer, and in the baffles and the sumps that I build, I've got quite a supply of rubble rock. The reason I like it in the baffles is because it's self-cleaning. It doesn't get a buildup of detritus. But
So yeah, there's all kinds of biomedia, like everybody's saying, like Chris is saying, and then
well, the
Ginger.
K1 media was
Well,
originally.
wait. So hang on. I want to make clear, because I just worry sometimes that we get to talking and we're not clarifying. So what they just said, I'm just reiterating it in a different way, is that basically you can do a completely artificial tank if that's what you want to do, by using some sort of other media in a different area, like the sump, or in my all-in-one, it's in the back chambers. K1 is a small, very porous media that they use in water cleaning treatment places. And we kind of latched onto it in the Seahorse world because it works so well. So if you have a tumbling, in my case, I have a 1 liter bottle with K1 in it that I have an airline attached to, so it tumbles in the back of the tank. That's providing that surface area that you would otherwise provide with sand and rock, right? So it's just about putting it in a different place, but still providing it. You're right. You can't just set up an artificial tank and call it a day. It has to have a sump
I
or an
have a big
all-in-one
sump
back.
full of biomedia.
So I just wanted to make that clear, because we're talking about, I just have K1, but it's that if you're just doing a standalone tank with no sump, you couldn't do that. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that point.
And how to keep the artificial plants stay put, I use suction cups and zip ties. And I get them on Amazon. You can find big packs of tiny suction cups. I zip tie them to the plant and suction cup them wherever I want them. And then
I use rock and drill a hole.
So there's different ways.
You know what's funny though? You mentioned it earlier, Holly. And the funny thing is, after I added all this crap, this artificial crap to this tank, and I shouldn't call it crap, it's cute. But I added it all to the tank. And again, at the end of the day, I found the Seahorses attached to the Robert King char chamber, the return nozzle, or a floating plant.
I like
one
stuff
of the plants
that moves sometimes. Yes.
Yep. I was going to say, the plant, I took a piece that broke off of a fake plant and I shoved it into a hole in the rock. And it came up, of course, because I didn't attach it in any way. And I found a seahorse floating along the surface. And I will say that'll happen in any kind of tank. In my macro tank, I used to love codium. If you don't know what green codium is, it looks like a finger. I think I showed a picture earlier, but it looks like a big hand or something. Anyways, it's long, perfectly for seahorses, to hitch on members, and a piece would break off and it'd be floating along the surface, and they'd attach to it and float along the surface. They love floating with the flow, right?
Yeah, well, that's what they do in nature too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they'll attach to something or something.
So put floating plants in your tank.
Yeah, give them something that travels too.
Exactly. All right, you guys, it's hitting that 10 o'clock time. We've talked about a ton tonight. Think it's been really great, and I love all the questions. This keeps the energy going and us having something to chat about, so I don't just ramble endlessly, right? And thank you, Ray, Cheryl, and Holly, for all of your thoughts, opinions, and advice, because it's been great. Chris, so glad you made it. Wish you were in here with us, but maybe next week. And yeah, with that, you guys, anything else before we call it a night?
And I'd like to just say, Kayla, I'm sorry for your loss. but don't
Mhm.
blame yourself. You're going to do great. You stepped up, you ask, and we're here to help you. So don't worry about asking questions of any of us.
Absolutely. And I did forget before we go. Is the seahorse lost?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
She
All
passed.
right. I thought maybe we could go through what she could do to try to save it, but yeah, sometimes it's not your fault, Kayla. You had a raw deal. It's not fair. Would you guys suggest that she get a new seahorse companion?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like we talked about, find a good source, you'll have a better chance. And now you know what to look for healthy seahorses. If you get with a reputable breeder, like we talked about, like Alyssa's Seahorse Savvy or Ocean Rider are the two big ones. Like they stand by their livestock and they are healthy, well cared
Hold
for.
on. She's asking, can she get another one? Can I get another one right, or should I wait? I would wait, but one of the things you need to keep in mind, Kayla, is that seahorses are social, and he's going to get really bummed out and lonely if he doesn't see another seahorse. So get him a mirror. He's not going to know it's himself that he's playing with through the glass. And
Okay,
put
I
it.
disagree. I disagree completely, and here's why. And I appreciate you, Cheryl, but I disagree because she lost this seahorse to no reason of the tank. Okay, there was nothing wrong
Other
with the
one
tank.
looks
There
fine
was
to me.
nothing wrong with the seahorse that is
Well, yeah,
huge
but I
and
mean,
survived.
even if
She
she
wait, hang
already,
on, let me finish. Let me finish. She purchased a seahorse, two seahorses that were too young, and the breeder did not give them time to either develop or not. So in Kayla's tank, one developed, one didn't. She lost the one that didn't, but so there's nothing wrong with the tank. I would add another one in
yeah,
right away.
I agree with you. I just don't want to see her all scrambling to get it one tomorrow and worried
Sure,
about her mate.
sure.
Mhm.
And
No,
that's my
so you're saying while she finds another one, get a
yeah.
mirror. Yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Take a
Okay.
deep breath, give him a mirror. He'll be fine. But if you don't give him a mirror,
Yeah,
he's going to sulk.
sure.
But he'll
But I
be
wouldn't
okay.
worry
Like
about
if
adding
it's a
another
few
seahorse.
weeks or
Now
something.
I do
It took
I do
me a
want to really
couple
quick.
weeks to replace one when Dandy's mate died, and he was fine in the meantime. So it's not like you're going to lose him due to loneliness within a week
No.
or something. He'll be okay.
And Ray said it's possible that there is a problem and it's in addition to the lack of growth problem and not bad enough to affect the other one at this
Hmm.
time. Right, true,
Hmm.
but you only live once, okay?
Hmm.
I'm personally just over trying to be sure that nothing's wrong because there's
Hmm.
gonna be something
Yeah.
wrong in every situation, right? So in your case, it really looks pretty obvious that the seahorse failed to thrive. You got it too young, it failed to thrive. They can say their opinion is there's nothing wrong with you adding a new one. If it had been a bacterial infection, both seahorses failed to thrive, or there, an illness that spread, different story. Then you don't add anything for a long time. But Kayla, in your circumstance, you did nothing wrong. The seahorse just failed to thrive. I'm saying you can add one when you're ready. Ray, you can disagree with me. It's okay.
I'm just
Being
a person
careful.
that prefers to be safer, and I would wait a bit and make sure that nothing does happen to the other one. And it may, even if there is a problem there that caused this one to die, the other one may not come down with the problem because its immune system is able to handle the situation at the current levels. So you could have a problem, wait a while, and the problem still be there, but just still not evident.
Well,
So
yeah.
it's
So
it's
that's
a
why I'm
personal
saying don't
decision
worry
really
about it.
on when you actually want to make the move and do that addition. So everybody has their own level of faith in what they're doing, and trust yourself. When you figure you've done everything you can, and you want to take the chance on it, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's that risk tolerance thing again.
Yep.
Mhm.
And Kayla did say that this has all made a lot of sense about buying them in a certain size and everything. And I'm so glad. I hope this helps people. You know,
Mhm.
we can disagree about things. It does depend on your risk tolerance level. I'm extremely careful about things, but in your case, I just really feel like you got a bum deal. And luckily, one of the seahorses thrived and is doing so well. And I just feel like if there was a problem, you would see it in that seahorse. Ray's right though. You might not. Maybe that seahorse has a better um,
Hi,
immune
Chris.
system. Hi, Chris. What's your thoughts? I every
Howdy.
time I try to end it, Chris joins, and then we got to keep going. All right,
Right,
I got to
Dan.
take this call. But Chris, what's up? What are your thoughts?
How's it going, guys?
Good. How are you,
I
Chris?
didn't actually. I'm doing good. I didn't actually hear the question, so I have no idea what you guys are talking about at the moment.
Sorry,
Oh, okay. So
Holly, go ahead.
okay, so we were discussing Kayla had posted earlier in Seahorse Sources group a seahorse that wasn't doing well. And our general consensus was that it was sold to her like underdeveloped. It wasn't a seahorse that was really ready to be sold or should have been sold. You know, it never grew. So she was it's unfortunately, you know, she was kind of doomed from the start with that seahorse, and it wasn't her fault, you know, at all.
The seahorse literally
Yeah, so
did
she's
not
kind of
grow
sort
at
of
all.
a disadvantage.
Yeah, she
But
had it a
basically, you
year.
want to know
She had-
if you had another one now or later.
Yeah, the real question, as Ray was saying, Chris, is if it's a case where we all believe that this seahorse was just bought, both seahorses were bought too young. One of them thrived and grew up and is huge and beautiful. The other one did not and is passed. Does she need to wait before she adds a new seahorse? That's the question.
I don't think so. I think she should be fine getting a new one or some new seahorses.
Mhm.
As long as the biofilter and everything can keep up and whatnot. Like, yeah, I don't really see a problem with it.
And
Yeah, that
I
was my
would
thought.
agree. I would just get another seahorse because the other one to me looks
The other one
fine.
looks
It's
The other one looks healthy. It's nice and fat. It's big. It's grown
doing
really
well.
well.
And if there is a problem, you know, with something with water quality, then deal with it at that point. You know,
Come
and
back to us and we'll help you,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly.
And Bonnie did say I would quarantine a new seahorse. What are your thoughts on quarantine, guys?
I do not
It's important.
quarantine from a trusted source. You know, like
Okay,
the
so it
ones
depends on where you buy them.
I put them directly in the tank. Now, if I had bought from a local fish store or some, I would feel differently, and I probably would quarantine. I think it depends on the source. If it's a trusted source, someone you know, or someone that's, you know, reputable, then I don't worry about it.
Good night, all. I'm going to hit the road.
No problem, Ray. Have a good
Okay.
night.
Good to
Thank
see you.
you
Have a good night.
for coming. And Chris, what are your thoughts on that? Should she quarantine, or what are your thoughts on quarantine?
My thoughts on quarantine are it's pretty important. Having run a facility and bringing in new seahorses and stuff, I always like to put them kind of aside and just see how they come in, how they settle in. I've actually had like Aptasia actually come in on seahorses before.
Ooh.
Good.
Those seahorses were from the wild, but I don't know whether the Aptasia came in on the seahorses from the wild or whether they were um, the Aptasia actually came from the facility where the seahorses come in from.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you can stop something like Aptasia coming in and infecting your tank, that's definitely an advantage. It's always important to bring in the seahorses, inspect them, see if they've got any unexpected hitchhikers on them. Maybe even do a freshwater bath or some other sort of prophylactic treatment just to make sure that you haven't got any hitchhikers on them, and potentially even set up a little hospital tank or a quarantine tank, and just water that you're planning on putting them in from the tank or whatever, and just see how they go in there. I know not everyone's going to set it up and do the work, but it's one of those things, like for an ounce of prevention, it's better than a pound of the cure when it's already too late.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, though, because I totally agree with everything you just said. But does it depend on, like Holly said, where you're purchasing? For instance, in your case, it's a must. Or in your case, where, in your previous case, it was a must. If you're buying from someone you don't know, I totally agree with you, it's a must. But if this person who has a healthy seahorse in her tank wants to add one more, buys from like Alyssa's Seahorse Savvy, the chances of something coming in on it are nil. I mean, it's not going to happen. So if you buy from a reputable breeder, then they recommend you don't quarantine. You temp acclimate and add the seahorse. So I think it depends on if they're captive bred, who you're dealing with, if you know the person, if you know it's a reputable source. What are your thoughts on? Because quarantine is never wrong. Having a quarantine tank, especially just observation, is never wrong. But I just think that the things you just advised about that are correct in certain cases are just so unlikely that, you know what I mean?
I would say, yeah, because I would say with Alyssa's, it's not necessary because, like I said, the thing about buying from her is that she stands behind them. If there's a problem, she'll replace the seahorse. And if you follow her instructions, then she'll replace a seahorse that has a problem. If you don't follow the breeder's instructions, they might say, well, I can't help you. You didn't follow the instructions. And her instructions say to put the seahorse directly in the tank. And you don't put some water in the bag or any of that like you do with other fish. You physically pick up the seahorse and put it into stream.
Well, wait, time out. You temp acclimate. You set the bag in the tank. And Dan, who's my mentor, he said the same thing. Follow the breeder's instructions so that if something goes wrong, you can get the seahorse replaced. Great point, Holly. But yeah, both of their instructions are set the bag in the tank, let it float.
Get the temperature match.
And then once the temperature matches, you literally scoop the seahorse out and plop them in. Now that, again, is if you have the tank set up the way you should, and that, that they've gone over it with you and that it's correct. But in Kayla's position, she has a seahorse that's gotten fat and thriving and doing well. So I'm assuming it's well. Chris made the great point. You have to make sure your biofilter's right. But I'm guessing in Kayla's situation, it is. So again, guys, we're not saying quarantine is bad in any way, shape, or form. It's always a safe bet. Nothing wrong if you want to do it. But follow whoever you're buying from's instructions so that if something goes wrong, they can help you without saying you didn't follow my instructions. I thank you, Holly, for making that point. Chris, what else is going on with you?
Oh, heaps. Yeah. No rest for the weekend.
I'm a big quarantiner, but I'm just very, very cautious because I don't want to take a chance with what I've already got that's doing great. So anything that comes in is going through a very long quarantine period. But you're talking to somebody that thinks 9 years of age is a nice ripe age for a young seahorse.
Yeah. And you're not wrong, Cheryl. I'm not disagreeing with you. When I get macros, I know they're probably not captive bred. Things are changing now. You can buy aqua or it's not aquacultured. What's the word?
The thing is,
You can buy
with
clean
this,
macros now, but if I get macros in, I'm going to quarantine them because I
Yeah.
don't know where they're from, don't know what's on them. I know how to quarantine them to bring out the bugs and the pests and stuff with light and with food. And I know how to work that system. But with seahorses, I mean, ask Dan or Alyssa, they're going to tell you, no, don't quarantine, temp acclimate, and add them to the system.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you buy a seahorse from a pet store, different situation, totally different.
the thing is, Tuple, we don't know the seahorse that she's got. Where exactly did he come from?
That's the one I would be more concerned about.
Yeah.
Like
True.
exposing the
But-
new
but-
seahorse to something that he has. But you can't help
Right,
that.
but wait a
That's
minute,
why
time out,
they
time
just
out,
add
time
it.
out, time out, time out. Quarantining the new seahorse
Mhm.
to prevent something that's going on with the old seahorse won't matter a bit.
Exactly my
It won't
point.
help.
I totally
It won't
agree.
do anything because that new seahorse in quarantine is going to still do fine. And once it's added with the old seahorse, then that's what's, when something's going to happen. Now, there could be a case made for getting the seahorse comfortable, like you quarantine for observation so that you can make sure the seahorse is eating, make sure the seahorse is happy, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, sure, that's all true, but it's going to be the same as the tank. And if there will be a problem with the old seahorse, it's going to happen either way.
Yes.
I wouldn't sweat it.
Same
You,
here.
you have to understand, I'm the net that quarantines any macro when I do bring in macro for a minimum of 6 months.
Like I said, macro's different, totally different.
Because I've run
Kayla's
into problems
situation-
with all kinds of things popping up when I didn't want it. I don't do that anymore because I run everything bare bottom. But I remember those days.
Sure. And like Chris said, he's had seahorses come in with aptasia on them. But I'm just saying that's not going to happen with a seahorse from Melissa, from Seahorse Savvy, from Ocean Rider, or from anyone you trust as a reputable breeder. That's not going to happen. It's just not. Those seahorses have been raised for at least 4 months
Oh, I know.
in a very clean situation. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's where is your stress tolerance, so to speak?
Or risk tolerance.
Risk tolerance. Thank you. And my problem is what I've already got. I'm not going to. It's going great. They're looking great. Everything's fine. It has been for years. I'm not going to take a chance on messing it up.
Okay, so here's my final 2 cents on this topic, because I see Zen Ginger's questions, and let me tell you, they're good questions.
It's not an
Hang on,
easy answer.
I've dove down that rabbit hole so many times. Well, what if this and what if that, and oh my gosh, it does depend on your risk tolerance level. I keep seahorses in situations where it's seahorses and snails. I've kept macros that have been quarantined, or I've kept, artificial tanks. But when you dive too deep in, then you never get anything done, right? I mean, if you get to the point where you're worried about everything, what if this seahorse affects this seahorse and this seahorse? I've done it. I have done it. And you do need to be careful. I'm not saying don't be careful, but I'm saying buy from a reputable breeder. You won't have the problems we're talking about. In Kayla's case, we don't know what's going on with the first seahorse.
Yes.
But, quarantining a new seahorse isn't going to change anything.
True.
She needs to add a new seahorse, and then we'll help her if there's a problem.
Mhm.
You can always treat the seahorse. Pound, as Chris said, do it beforehand. It's better. What was
Kelly,
your quote, Chris?
An ounce of
Hang on.
prevention.
It's
Pound
better
the
than
cure.
pound the cure.
You have to understand
Yeah,
with
I
me.
agree with that. But if you're Cheryl, I
Combs are
know, honey.
noted for carrying your onema. So when I set up my combs, the opposite end of the house from where my erectus were. Just for that. Yeah,
I totally get it. I totally get it. And your advice and your opinions are so smart, but we're not talking about someone trying to keep two
Yeah, I
different
know.
species
I'm
and wild caught and all that. We're talking about someone that has a hopefully captive bred seahorse and she wants to add another captive bred seahorse. I just think we complicate it too much on the show sometimes. We dive into all the what ifs
Yeah.
and we get too detailed, and people don't need to worry about that stuff, because if you're buying from a reputable breeder, you shouldn't have to worry about any of this. And if you do have to worry about it, they'll help you.
Yeah.
If they care about their
Exactly.
company, they will help you through it, and we will help you through it.
Yeah.
So
I
that's the end of my
I
2
wouldn't
cents.
worry about it. And I see,
Yeah.
like Zen Ginger says, speaking from freshwater, but when you order fish, sometimes the shipping and change in environment can stress them and aggravate the situation. So she just likes to watch for a
Absolutely.
minute, which is good. And I'll tell you from experience with my seahorses, though, they're actually really hardy compared
Yes.
to other fish. As far as when you add them to a tank or whatever, the seahorses acclimate more quickly, in my experience, than a lot of other fish that I have had. Honest.
I agree. I agree. I've taken videos of seahorses like in the bag, slamming the bag,
Yeah,
wanting to get to the
they want to get
tank
out.
and not stressed. They're just
They want
like,
to get
we're
out.
done with this.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
and
done.
they're
We're
fine
good. Get
within
us
a
in that
few
tank.
minutes. Yeah,
Yeah,
most of the time. I haven't really had any issues acclimating seahorses the way that I have with some other fish, honestly.
me too. Me too. Chris, you joined us and we've kind of swapped you out. What else is going on with you?
Oh, heaps of stuff, but not much with the seahorses.
Yeah. Okay.
Just
Well,
thought I'd join in
we're
and
about to
say good
end,
day. And
so
Well, it's good to see you. Good to see you back.
yeah,
yes, we always appreciate your thoughts and advice and your experience. We always appreciate you jumping in. And after we end, you can tell us what's going on with you personally. But yeah, and Kayla, I'm sorry. Sometimes we do kind of jump around and have difference of opinions, but because it depends. Cheryl is an expert in seahorses. She's going to tell you the absolute, and so is Chris. They're going to tell you the absolute expert way to do it if you're able to do it that way, right? But all of us can't set up tubs for
you mean I
fry
can't
and
get my hip for zebra?
right. I know you want the zebra, Cheryl. But if you're just trying to just keep seahorses, it doesn't have to be that. I always worry that people watch the show and think, oh my God, I could never keep
She knows why I'm
seahorses.
laughing.
Yes. But I worry that people watch the show and think, I could never keep seahorses. Oh my God, they're talking about uranema and
No, I don't
gillstock
make
shrimpers
it.
and all
It's
this
not
other
that
shit.
complicated in
It's
my
not.
world.
It's not. It's not. You can keep seahorses, have a lovely tank, and not dive into all that shit. And if you do come here and we help you and we figure it out, right?
Yeah.
With that,
sure.
you guys, I want to hear what's going on in Chris's life. So I'm gonna let the rest of you live streamers go. So let's all say happy Wednesday. Any questions for Chris? We can talk him into coming back next week, hopefully. But for tonight, let's cheers it and say goodnight. Holly, you got to do it.
Cheers.
Happy Wine Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Cheers.